She doesn't want the man who gives her the world. She wants the man who could give her the world, but doesn't. She only truly loves the man who can break her ego and walk away if he has to. And if you're the man who's always available, always agreeable, always hoping she'll see your worth, you're already forgotten. I lead the frame. If you're done being her second choice, now listen closely. What you're about to hear isn't nice. It isn't easy, but it will change everything if you're ready. You were told that if you treated her right, stayed loyal, stayed respectful, gave her your time, she'd love you. But that version of you, the one who overgives, who waits for her to choose you, who trades presents for validation, that version of you is the one she walks away from. You're not crazy for feeling confused. You're not weak for wondering why the girl who said she cared disappeared when you finally cared too. Every man watching this has felt it. That pit in your stomach when she starts acting cold. That silence after you've poured out everything. That feeling of being good and still not being enough. This is the reality most men live. But today, we pull the curtain back. We talk about control. We talk about desire. We talk about why she only truly loves you after you break her ego. And to every man who's done being the good guy that gets forgotten, the full blueprint is already written. It's called the Stoic Relationship Blueprint ebook for men. The guide built for men who are done playing games and ready to lead. Not theory, not fluff. A clear system to take full control over your relationships, your mind, and your value. But this blueprint won't stay available forever. We are preserving it for those who are truly ready. Keep watching, because by the end of this video, you'll understand why it's one of the most important resources you'll ever own. Now, let's talk about why she only truly loves you after you break her ego. Number 1. She tests you to control you. She doesn't test you because she wants to understand you. She tests you because she wants to control you. From the very first moment she senses your attention, she's already calculating what part of herself she can withhold to make you chase. She's watching for your reaction. When she ignores your message for hours, she's measuring your worth by how quickly you fold. When she threatens to pull away if you bend, you fail. You think she wants emotional safety? No, she wants emotional superiority. Every moment of tension you feel around her is by design. Every delay, every unexplained mood shift, every passive-aggressive comment is a trap disguised as intimacy. It's a system she learned young on how to condition men into obedience by playing with affection and absence like a switch. She flirts, then withdraws. She shares, then vanishes. She says she loves communication, but punishes you for being direct. You call it mixed signals. She calls it control. And if you chase that confusion long enough, you stop being a man with a direction. You become a boy looking for approval. You trade your boundaries for her breadcrumbs. You try to decode her moods, fix her bad day, earn back the version of her who was sweet for a moment. But that version of her only existed to pull you in. That was bait. The real test started the moment you cared. Because now she wants to know, will you abandon your center to please her? Chaos? Will you give up your truth to win her back? She won't say it out loud, but she doesn't want to be the most important thing in your life. She wants to see if she can become it. She doesn't want your devotion. She wants your surrender. She wants to be the drug and you the addict. And if you give in, she loses respect, not because you were weak, but because you let her script become your reality. Because she senses when a man has lost his mission, when his attention is no longer his to control, when his energy no longer moves forward, but circles around her, hoping for another hit of affection. She doesn't want a partner, she wants power. And she gains it every time you react, every time you explain yourself, every time you break your own standards just to keep her around. What you call being a good man, she sees as a sign. She has you wrapped around her finger. And once you're there, once she knows, she can pull your strings with a glance or a pout. You are no longer her equal. You are her pawn. She will never say it, but she's disgusted by the control she has over you. Because deep down she wanted you to lead, to hold the frame, to resist. She wanted to feel the strength of a man who doesn't budge. But when you caved, when you tried to reason with her moods, when you begged her to talk, when you made her the emotional sun around which your universe revolved, she knew she won. And in that victory, she lost desire. If this feels familiar, it's because it's the story of millions of men who loved with sincerity and got punished for it. It's the pain that comes from not knowing the rules of the game. And now you know, her tests were never about connection. They were about control. And unless you reclaim your power, unless you become the man who is unshaken by manipulation and unmoved by drama, you will keep playing a game you were never meant to win. Number 2. Nice guys trigger her indifference. You think she left because she didn't see your value, but the truth is more brutal. She saw it too early, too clearly, and she got bored because the nice guy reveals everything too fast. His feelings, his plans, his weaknesses, his affection. He offers up his soul on the first date and wonders why she walks away with nothing but polite thank yous. You were told that being kind, attentive, emotionally available would make you desirable. That if you just proved how safe you were, how loving, how ready for a future, she'd choose you. But she never asked for proof. She never asked you to explain your intentions. She wanted to feel something she couldn't predict. And you, in your eagerness to be accepted, became transparent, predictable, a walking manual of politeness and long texts and plans. Too early. She knew what you'd say before you said it. She knew you'd reply before she even hit send. She knew you'd show up, pay, listen, door, forgive before she ever did anything to earn it. You didn't turn her off because you weren't enough. You turned her off because she had nothing left to figure out. And without mystery, there is no desire. Without challenge, there is no value. You made yourself available, and she interpreted it as emotional desperation. You thought consistency was love. She felt it as obligation. You gave more, she respected you less. You planned the date, bought the gift, wrote the poem, and she scrolled past your messages like a notification. Not because she's evil, because she's hardwired to be drawn to what isn't certain. And certainty is the one thing you flooded her with. You removed every unknown, every doubt, every tension. And in doing so, you also removed the emotional space where attraction grows. She wants to earn your affection. She wants to wonder if you're fully hers. She wants to feel the weight of your attention as something rare, not something that pours out regardless of her behavior. But you never gave her that. You gave everything all at once. Not because you were generous, but because you were afraid. Afraid of losing her, afraid of rejection, afraid she might see the real you and walk away. And so you performed, you optimized, you catered, you showed her your best and hid your truth. And she saw it, all of it, and she left. Not because you weren't good enough, but because you were never real enough. She doesn't want a rehearsed version of you. She wants the you that doesn't explain every feeling, the you that lives fully in when she's not watching, the you that can walk away without guilt. But instead, you made her the center of your worth. You waited, you chased, you apologized for things that weren't your fault just to keep her calm. And in doing so, you stopped being a man she could admire. You became a man she could control. And she's not wired to love what she controls. That's why she keeps going back to the one who's not always available, who sometimes says no, who sometimes disappears because he doesn't hand over his time. He makes her earn it. And in the earning, she feels the kind of pull she never felt with you. And that's the truth. No one tells you that love isn't born from safety. It's born from the thrill of pursuit. And if you don't make her pursue, if you don't make her wonder, if you don't give her something she has to reach for, you'll always be the man she, thanks for being so kind, before she leaves to find someone who makes her feel alive. No. 3. Predictability kills attraction. There is no faster way to die in a woman's eyes than to become predictable. You think showing up every day, texting her good morning, planning every Friday night, complimenting her regularly, being emotionally open, checking in, constantly telling her how much you care, how beautiful she is, how ready you are to give her everything. You think this earns her heart. You think loyalty will be reciprocated with love. You think consistency guarantees connection. But she's not wild. to respond to routine with affection. She's wired to chase what she cannot fully grasp. The more she can predict you, the less she can desire you, and she doesn't even know this. It's buried deep in her instincts, beneath all the words about wanting a nice guy, a stable guy, a consistent guy. But watch her actions. Watch what happens. The moment she fully understands your pattern, the second she knows how you'll respond, how you'll react, when you'll text, what you'll say, what you'll do. Next, you become invisible. Her attention drifts, her tone shifts, her warmth fades. Not because you did something wrong, but because you did everything the same. You killed her curiosity, you remove the mystery, and once she knows you too well, once you've handed her the full map of your emotional landscape, she feels like she's standing in a house with no locked doors, and nobody explores what they've already conquered. This is not about playing games. This is not about withholding love. This is about becoming the kind of man who is so grounded in himself, so focused on his direction, so aligned with his own values, that his attention is earned, not distributed freely. The moment you put her ahead of your path, ahead of your standards, ahead of your own evolution, you move from being the journey to being the stop along the way. You turn from a challenge into a comfort, and comfort breeds indifference. Think about every time you dropped your plans to be with her, every time you replied instantly, every time you said yes when you wanted to say no, every time you kept the peace instead of speaking your truth. You thought you were being respectful. She felt suffocated by how easily she could control the temperature of your presence. And here's the part that cuts deepest. She might have even cried when you walked away. She might have told you she missed you, needed you, begged you to come back. But it wasn't love. It was the panic of losing someone she could control. And when you came back, when you picked up where you left off, gave her everything again, the cycle repeated. Why? Because she never had to fight for your affection. She never had to wonder if you would stay. She never had to earn your love. And anything given to easily is valued the same cheaply. If you're always the one initiating, always the one showing up, always the one pushing forward, you're not in a relationship. You're in emotional debt, and she's collecting without giving back. The truth is brutal. The men she thinks about, dreams, about chases, they're not the ones who filled her world. They're the ones who made her wonder if she was good enough to fit into theirs. You need to become that man, not by pretending, not by manipulating, but by stepping so deeply into your own purpose, your own self-respect, your own direction, that her presence in your life is a bonus, not your baseline. You need to stop repeating yourself, stop explaining, stop trying to prove. Let her feel the space, let her reach, let her chase. If she can't find you, let that be part of your power. If she misses you, let her feel the distance. And if she walks away because you stopped showing up the way she expected, then you were never loved. You were tolerated. And the man who is tolerated is never respected. Predictability isn't peace, it's emotional death. And if you keep giving it, don't be surprised when she looks for life in the arms of someone less available, someone less known, someone who never offered the world, but made her work turn his time. No, for emotional chaos sparks desire. She doesn't crave peace. She craves contrast, not violence, not chaos for the sake of pain, but the kind of contrast that keeps her awake at night, wondering where she stands with you. That contrast is the fire she can't walk away from. When you give her too much certainty, too much presence, too much emotional accessibility, you remove the very thing that stirs her attraction, unpredictability. She needs to feel like she's discovering a new part of you every time she's around. She needs to feel tension, the subtle, almost imperceptible tension that comes from not knowing if you'll always say yes, always be there, always chase. This is what ignites desire in her. Not because she's broken, because her entire psychological landscape is wired to respond to uncertainty with emotional investment. Batman, who sometimes vanishes, who sometimes says no, who leaves her wondering if he still cares. She dreams about him. She talks about him to her friends. She writes about him in her notes. Because he treats her well, often he doesn't, but because he triggers that ancient part of her that can't look away. You don't need to be toxic to inspire this. You don't need to play games, but you do need to be elusive in your energy. You need to be a man whose attention is earned, not assumed. When she doesn't know what you'll say next. She leans in when she doesn't know if she's still on your mind. She checks when she doesn't feel fully secure. She works for the connection, and the more she works, the more invested she becomes. This is the dynamic that creates obsession, not stability, not reassurance. It's the same reason she checks her phone after sending a message. It's the same reason she stalks the man who posts but doesn't reply. Her body responds to lack of control with emotional obsession. And the man who knows this, who understands that his energy is currency, learns to use it wisely. He doesn't rush to reply. He doesn't over-explain. He doesn't pour out his thoughts to keep her warm. He lets her feel his distance, not because he's cruel, but because he's intentional. Because he knows she has to earn her way into his world, not be handed a free pass. Most men drown women in consistency. They think the more they show up, the more they're chosen. But that isn't love. That's emotional, smothering, and it pushes her away because she doesn't feel the space to miss you. She doesn't feel the hunger to see you. She doesn't feel the tension that makes her dream. You want her to desire you. Stop being so easy to find. Stop being so quick to forgive. Stop being so eager to please. Be the man who creates space and lets her walk into it. Be the man who values his energy and doesn't offer it to someone who hasn't proved she deserves it. That's the difference between love that fades and love that lasts. Not safety or security, but controlled imbalance. The art of being present without being predictable. The power of being felt without being explained. The ability to let her chase, to let her work, to let her wonder, and in doing so, to let her fall so deeply into you that no other man feels enough again. Because she doesn't fall for stability, she falls for tension. She doesn't love the one who says, "I'll always be here." She loves the one who makes her ask, "Will he stay?" And in that question, she becomes yours. Not through assurance, but through obsession. Number 5. Unavailable men create addiction. You've seen it with your own eyes. The man who barely shows up, who forgets her birthday, who vanishes for days and returns like nothing happened. Yet she chases him like he holds the key to her soul. You watched her cry over him, lose sleep over him, defend him when her friends warned her, and run to him even when he gave her almost nothing. And you stood there, giving her your time, your attention, your loyalty, your comfort. And she barely looked your way. Not because you were raw, not because you were lacking, but because you were fully present, and full presence, without scarcity, becomes background noise. She didn't feel pulled to you because she already had all of you. Her instincts didn't have to work. Her mind didn't have to wonder. Her emotions didn't have to reach. You were there always, and that killed her craving. Meanwhile, the man who didn't give her answers, who never confirmed how he felt, who was too busy chasing his own life to explain himself, that man became her obsession. Not because he was better than you, because he was absent enough to trigger her longing. His energy wasn't always there, his words were unpredictable, his approval was uncertain. And in that emotional ambiguity, her mind lit up like a machine searching for resolution. She wasn't addicted to his love. She was addicted to the chance of earning it, to the emotional high of maybe today he'll respond. Maybe tonight, he'll ask to see me. Maybe this time he'll stay. Every maybe became a spark. Every delay became a reason to hold on. Every unexplained distance became a puzzle her heart needed to solve. You offered clarity, and she felt nothing. He offered confusion, and she couldn't walk away. That is not dysfunction, that is design. It's the brutal truth that most men are never told, that a woman's emotional investment often deepens, not through comfort, but through contrast. And the man who withholds just enough to keep her guessing, not out of cruelty, but out of standard, becomes the man she attaches to. Because he's not desperate for her validation, because he doesn't need her to understand him, to feel whole, because his world doesn't shrink when she pulls away. And in that independence, she sees value because deep down she doesn't want to be the center of your universe. She wants to earn her place in it. And if she doesn't have to earn it, she won't stay. That's why the man who is slightly out of reach, emotionally layered, hard to fully predict, becomes the one she can't replace. Because he's not available to just anyone. Because his attention is not handed out. It's earned. Because every time she gets a piece of him, she feels like she found gold. And when she doesn't know if she'll get more, she chases, she invests, she attaches. The reason she's addicted to the man who disappears isn't because she loves pain. It's because her emotional system is trained to fight for what's uncertain. And if you want to become unforgettable, you need to stop being emotionally free for anyone who smiles at you. You need to be scarce, not out of strategy, but because your time is sacred, because your energy is expensive, because your focus belongs to your purpose, not to anyone who demands your attention without proving their worth. When you start living like that, you'll see how quickly they come back, how quickly they lean in, how quickly they wonder what changed. And the truth is, everything changed. You stopped being the man who overgave and became the man who let others earn him. That's not manipulation. That's value. And women don't stay where they're constantly given. They stay where they constantly grow. And growth only happens when the man she desires isn't always available, but always worth the effort. Number 6. Stability makes her feel trapped. You were taught that if you were stable, calm, supportive, always there, she'd feel safe. And in that safety, she'd build a home with you. So you showed up every time she needed you. You listened to her breakdowns. You fixed the things she didn't even ask you to fix. You reminded her she was beautiful when she didn't believe it. You held her when she cried about someone else. You reassured her when her past traumas made her push you away. You thought, if I give her peace, she'll finally stop running. But instead, she left, or she grew distant, or she stopped laughing at your jokes, or she started needing space. And you sat there, confused, asking yourself why I gave her everything I had. I made her feel safe. Yes, but too soon, too easily, too completely. You didn't offer her a journey. You gave her a destination she hadn't earned. And what she once admired, she now feels burdened by. Because in the safety you provided, there was no more fire, no more edge, no more pull. Just calm, just comfort. And while she said she wanted a man who wouldn't hurt her, she stayed up at night thinking about the one who did. Because with him, she felt something intense, something uncertain, something that made her feel alive. Your safety felt like a cage, not because it was wrong, because it had no boundaries. You made your world about her, and she felt trapped in that responsibility, trapped in your expectations, trapped in a love that never made her work. You removed the challenge, you removed the polarity, and in doing so, you removed her desire. She stopped dressing up. She stopped texting first. She stopped trying because she knew she didn't need to. Because your love was unconditional. Not in a noble way, but in a desperate way. Because even when she pulled back, you leaned in. Even when she forgot to say thank you, you still showed up. Even when she disrespected you, you justified it. You told yourself you were being mature, that you were holding space, that real men stay grounded. And yes, real men do stay grounded, but they don't abandon their dignity in the name of peace. They don't ignore their needs just to keep a woman close. They don't let their emotional presence be taken for granted. You thought you were being a rock, but to her, you became a doormat. And not because she's cruel, but because human nature values what is earned, not what is guaranteed. You didn't make her feel lucky to have you. You made her feel like you'd always be there, no matter what. And that kind of emotional certainty, when given too soon, too often, becomes invisible. You want her to feel safe, then be stable, but with boundaries. Be calm, but not always available. Be supportive, but never at the expense of your mission. Let her feel that your love is deep, but not automatic, that it must be nurtured, respected, cherished. Otherwise, she will love the idea of you, but suffocate under the weight of your devotion. She will look elsewhere, for the edge she no longer finds in you, and you will sit there, wondering why being good wasn't good enough. It was never about being good. It was about being valuable, and value in the world of desire is tied to what is rare, not what is consistent. You want to change her world, then stop trying to be her everything. Be her something she has to reach for, someone she has to grow, to stay with, someone she must respect, to receive. That's how you make safety magnetic. Not by overgiving, but by protecting your worth, everything, because it doesn't come to just anyone. Number 7. Become the man she can't replace. The man she can't replace is not the one who loved her the most, not the one who showed up first, not the one who stayed through every storm. He is the one she could never fully grasp, never fully possess, never fully decode. He is the man who moved through life with such clarity, such certainty, such anchored presence, that even her affection was a guest, not a guarantee. She doesn't remember the man who answered every text, who changed his schedule, who said yes to everything. She remembers the man who looked her in the eye and said no without explaining. She remembers the man who walked away without anger when she crossed his line. She remembers the one who held her without need, loved her without fear, and let her go without begging. Because that man stood alone, lonely, but full, yet seeking, but choosing. And in a world full of men who bend at the sight of her tears, who chase at the first sign of withdrawal, who fold their values for a chance at love, he was the one who held the line. That line, that invisible boundary between himself and the world, between his values and her emotions, between his mission and her validation. That line made him irreplaceable, because every time she tried to test him, she was met not with anger, not with resistance, but with stillness, with presence, with a kind of unshakable dignity that made her question herself, that made her respect him even when she didn't agree with him. And that respect turned to desire, because desire is not born in comfort, it's born in awe. And she was in awe of the man who didn't lose himself for her. He didn't try to impress her, he didn't decorate his pain with charm, he didn't open his heart to the unworthy. He lived simply, fully, unrepentantly. He went to the gym, not for aesthetics, but because discipline was his way of life. He wrote down his goals, not to be admired, but because structure gave his spirit direction. He built himself, not for applause, but for alignment. And in that alignment, she found herself craving more. Not more of what he gave her, but more of what he represented. He became a symbol, not just of manhood, but of self-respect. And every time she left, she came back. Not because he asked, not because he waited, but because she couldn't replace the feeling of being around a man who did not need her, who did not beg, who did not lose sleep trying to make her stay. That is the man you must become. The man who is content in solitude, the man who builds in silence, the man who speaks only when his words are rooted in truth, not fear, the man whose presence is a gift, not an offer. You think love is about doing more? It's not. It's about being more still, more clear, more unwavering. She can replace your flowers. She can replace your dinners. She can replace your compliments, but she cannot replace the feeling of being in the presence of a man who knows who he is. That's what stays. That's what lingers. That's what makes her scroll through old photos, reread old messages, dream about you when she's lying next to someone else. Because your energy, your frame, your essence, it marked her. And no man who comes after you, no matter how loud or available or wealthy or charming, will feel like enough. Because she once stood next to a man who gave nothing, he didn't mean, who showed up only when he wanted to, who left when he wasn't honored. And that kind of man isn't found twice. So build yourself relentlessly, guard your time like a kingdom, refuse access to your heart like it's sacred land. Be slow to give, quick to leave when dishonored, impossible to manipulate. Be calm, but never soft. Be kind, but never weak. Let your strength be quiet, and your boundaries loud. Let your love be deep, but never free. And when she finally understands what she had and lost, when the noise fades and the thrill of novelty dies, she'll remember the one man she couldn't predict, couldn't control, couldn't keep, but couldn't forget. That man, brother, is who you were born to be. And when you become him, you won't chase. You won't explain. You won't wait. Because you'll finally understand. You were never just a man. You were the whole experience. Most men will never hear this truth. They'll waste years chasing women who only saw them as emotional convenience stores. They'll build their lives around someone who saw them as replaceable. They'll die full of regrets, wondering why being good was never good enough. And it's not their fault, it's the lies they were fed. But you don't have to be that man. You've seen behind the curtain. Now, you know what she really responds to. You felt these truths in your gut. And if you're ready to live with clarity, confidence, and complete control over your value, then it's time. The Stoic Relationship Blueprint ebook for men is now available, built for men like you who are ready to lead, not follow. It's linked in the comments. Get it while you still can. This is more than an ebook. It's your guide to never being used, played, or forgotten again. Comment the Stoic Blueprint if you're done being